The third thing I'd like to do here quickly is just outline very briefly the strategic geography of Japan-Taiwan relations. And I think some of this is pretty basic, so I'll just do it pretty quickly. But in terms of thinking about maritime security, energy, and trade flows, we think about the waters around Taiwan, not just in the straits, but we think about the Western Pacific, the South China Sea, I mean, even going so far as the Indian Ocean, to the extent that the Indian Navy is now operating in these waters around Japan and Taiwan. Taiwan and Japan obviously have a huge confluence of interests in terms of the vast preponderance of their energy resources that move through these waters, in terms of the way their respective navies operate in these waters. And when we think about fast forward to a future, which I hope doesn't pass, in which Taiwan, perhaps against its wishes, is controlled by the mainland, and Taiwan is a center for power projection by the Chinese PLA into all of these waters, not just the Straits, but the Western Pacific, the South China Sea, etc. This just transforms the configuration, not only for Taiwanese interests most fundamentally, but really for Japan. I mean, there's a rather pessimistic argument that Japan doesn't have a strategic future because it becomes isolated from its closest friends and allies in the event of really, really assertive Chinese power projection out of Taiwan as Chinese capabilities develop. There is also a second point about strategic geography beyond the maritime, which is, again, the basic point that the Chinese missile and defense buildup, the really offensive buildup of capabilities across the spectrum dedicated at Taiwan and at deterring the U.S. from intervening in a Taiwan contingency, have equal applications for Japan, right? The missiles in Fujian can reach Japanese territory just as they can reach Taiwanese. The asymmetric capabilities designed to deter the U.S. from intervening in a Taiwan-China conflict also have huge utility for China in extremely and severely complicating the U.S. defense of Japan, right? So there are fundamental questions about the U.S.-Japan alliance and our ability to maintain our commitments to our greatest ally in Asia in light of capabilities that China has developed to target Taiwan and to target U.S. ability to protect Taiwan. This speaks to just this third point on strategic geography, which is really to think about the future of the U.S. ability to operate freely in wider Asia as well as in East Asia. And of course, it's transformed if China is in hostile hands. If Taiwan is in hostile hands, if Taiwan becomes a basis for Chinese power projection against us and our friends. Of course, the question of Okinawa, which is really the center for U.S. power projection in East and Southeast Asia. The future of Okinawa is really brought into question. The ability of the U.S. Navy to operate freely in these waters that carry so much of the world's energy supplies and trade resources is really brought into question in a really basic way. So again, just to reinforce this point about Taiwan as really a pivot rather than a sideshow.